My stepmother used to crush pills and mix them into our juice boxes before her charity events because she said my ADHD brother and I were embarrassing to her trophy wife image. I started secretly recording her drugging us for 2 years until the night my 8-year-old brother turned blue and stopped breathing at her biggest gala. When I screamed for help in front of 200 guests, she tried to hit me with a champagne bottle but missed, and the glass shattered in her face. Then the police found all my videos of her crushing pills with her jewelry hammer. My stepmother used to slip crushed pills into our juice boxes. My little brother Jake had ADHD, like the kind where he'd literally bounce off walls and talk a mile a minute. And me? I was the kid who couldn't sit still in class, always tapping, always moving. But that didn't fit with her image as the trophy wife of a Fortune 500 CEO. Her reasoning? We were embarrassing at her charity galas and country club brunches. And when I turned 15, I started to notice things. It all started when Jake wouldn't wake up after one of her dinner parties. Not like normal sleep, like couldn't shake him awake sleep, but I was ready. I'd been secretly pouring out my drinks and pretending to be drowsy. Except watching my 8-year-old brother barely breathing didn't feel like the victory I thought it would. In fact, it made me feel powerless. So much so that I started documenting everything on my phone, even though I was terrified of what she'd do if she found out. And don't get me wrong, I loved my dad. But I know he saw how we'd practically pass out at 7 p.m. whenever she had events. How we'd miss school the next day, too groggy to function. But he never did anything, because in his eyes, she was the perfect wife who kept our family's reputation spotless. Plus, at those parties, she had the devoted stepmother role down to a T. She'd carry Jake around when he was too drugged to walk, telling guests he was just tired from playing. She'd stroke my hair while I slumped in chairs, whispering to her friends about how challenging special needs children could be. It was sickening. But one good thing did come out of it. I learned to fake taking those drinks. You see, I channeled all that hyperactive energy into protecting Jake. So by 16, not only could I perfectly mimic being sedated, but I'd learned to make myself throw up silently to get the substances out when I had to actually drink them. She was planning her biggest event yet, a charity auction for children's health. The irony wasn't lost on me. But Jake had been getting worse. The doses were getting stronger. At this point, I'd been recording everything. Her crushing pills, mixing drinks, even her phone calls with her doctor friend who supplied them without prescriptions. The morning of the gala, Jake could barely open his eyes. She was frantic about him being too energetic for the photographers. I watched her make his special breakfast smoothie with twice the usual amount. Just to be safe, she muttered. I spent the entire day trying to keep Jake awake, made him play video games, splash cold water on his face, anything. But by 6 p.m., when the guests started arriving, he was fading. She dressed him in his little tuxedo while he swayed on his feet. The party was incredible. She kept pulling Jake and me into photos, her manicured nails digging into our shoulders to keep us upright. She told everyone how proud she was of her boys and their progress with their behavioral challenges. For the first time, I saw several guests exchange concerned looks, or so I thought, because as it turns out, one of those guests was Dr. Morrison, a pediatric neurologist, and he'd been watching Jake very carefully. Around 9 p.m., Jake started turning blue, started making these tiny gasping sounds. The champagne glass shattered when it hit the marble floor as she dropped it. "Jake's not breathing!" I screamed, loud enough for all 200 guests to hear. Dr. Morrison pushed through the crowd and immediately started CPR. "This child has been drugged," he announced. "Someone call 911, now." She grabbed my arm, those perfect nails drawing blood. "You did this. You've always been jealous that I gave your father the perfect life. You probably drugged him to frame me." She was holding her champagne bottle, still half full from toasting her charitable work. Before I could even process what was happening, she swung it at my head. "You're ruining everything!" I ducked instinctively. There was a crack, followed by the most blood-curdling scream I've ever heard. She'd smashed the bottle against the marble pillar when she missed me. Glass shards had embedded in her face and neck. Blood was mixing with her foundation, creating pink streams down her designer dress. The room erupted. Guests were screaming, recording, calling police. She ran toward the bathroom, but collapsed in the hallway. I could hear my dad shouting Jake's name over and over. 2 ambulances arrived. Jake needed his stomach pumped and barely made it. She needed multiple surgeries to remove the glass. When the police got to the hospital and asked what happened, I just said, "Check my phone." 2 years of videos. Her crushing pills with her jewelry hammer, measuring doses while on the phone with her dealer. Jake's medical records showing mysterious illnesses that only happened before her events. Voice recordings of her calling us those hyperactive little shits to her friends. My dad's face went ghost white. The hospital waiting room became our temporary home for the next 3 days. Jake's monitors beeped steadily, while tubes helped clear the substances from his system. I stayed by his bedside, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like it was precious. Dad paced the hallways, alternating between Jake's room and wherever they were treating her. Dr. Morrison visited twice daily, running tests and documenting everything. He explained to the police officers who came by that the substance levels in Jake's system were dangerously high, consistent with long-term sedative abuse. The officers took notes, collected my phone as evidence, and said they'd be in touch. On the 3rd day, Jake finally opened his eyes properly. He looked around the room, confused and groggy, before focusing on me. I squeezed his hand and told him everything would be okay. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. I gave him ice chips and waited. Dad appeared in the doorway looking haggard. His usually perfect CEO appearance was gone, replaced by wrinkled clothes and stubble. He sat on the other side of Jake's bed and broke down completely. Jake watched him with wide eyes, not understanding why Dad was crying. The next morning, a social social worker arrived. She interviewed Jake gently, asking about home life and his stepmother. Jake, still weak but more alert, told her about the special drinks that made him sleepy. He mentioned missing school and feeling sick after breakfast. The social worker took careful notes. I showed her my documentation folder on my laptop, the backup of everything from my phone, videos spanning 2 years, medical records I'd secretly photographed, recordings of her phone calls. The social worker's expression grew more serious with each piece of evidence. Dad had to make a choice. The social worker made it clear that Jake couldn't go home if she was there. Dad nodded slowly, understanding the weight of the decision. He made phone calls to lawyers, to his assistant, to security at our house. We learned she'd been released after her surgeries, facial reconstruction for the glass damage. Dad's insurance covered everything, of course. She'd already been calling his phone non-stop, leaving messages about how this was all a misunderstanding, how I'd set her up. The drive home felt different. Jake sat between Dad and me in the back of the SUV, clutching a stuffed dinosaur the nurses had given him. Our house looked the same from the outside, but everything had changed. Dad had security change the locks and codes while we were gone. Inside, evidence of her presence was everywhere. Her designer shoes by the door, her collection of charity plaques on the wall, the kitchen where she'd prepared those poisoned smoothies. Dad walked through each room like he was seeing it for the first time. That night, Jake slept in my room. He was afraid to be alone, jumping at every sound. I stayed awake, watching him breathe normally for the first time in months. No substances, no shallow breathing, just my little brother sleeping peacefully. The next morning brought chaos. She showed up at the gate, demanding entry. Security turned her away, but she stood there screaming about her rights, about how this was her home. Neighbors came out to watch. Dad closed all the curtains and told us to stay away from windows. Her lawyer called within hours. She wanted her belongings, access to her accounts, and was threatening to sue for assault. Dad's lawyer countered with the evidence of child endangerment. It became a cold war of legal threats. Jake started therapy the following week. The therapist specialized in trauma and children. Jake drew pictures during sessions, images of glasses filled with cloudy liquid and stick figures falling asleep. The therapist documented everything for potential court proceedings. I returned to school, but couldn't focus. Teachers knew something had happened. The story had spread through our social circles. Some kids whispered about the charity gala incident. I kept my head down and counted days until Jake would be fully recovered. Dad threw himself into damage control. His company's board was concerned about the scandal. He spent long hours in meetings, managing the fallout. The charity organization distanced themselves, quietly removing her from their board positions. 2 weeks after the hospital, she made her first real move. A mutual friend called Dad, saying she'd been spreading stories about my supposed substance problem, how I'd poisoned Jake to frame her. She claimed I was jealous of her relationship with Dad. The security footage from our home became crucial. Dad had installed cameras years ago for safety. We spent hours reviewing footage, finding clips of her preparing drinks, adding powders, measuring doses. Each video was time-stamped and dated. Jake's recovery was slow. Without the constant substances, his natural ADHD returned full force. But seeing him bounce around the house, talking non-stop about video games and dinosaurs, was beautiful. This was who he really was, not the drugged zombie she'd created. Her next tactic was emotional manipulation. She sent Dad long emails about their wedding vows, their plans for the future, how she'd raised us as her own. She attached photos from family vacations, charity events where we all looked perfect together. I found Dad crying over these emails one night. He showed me one where she described picking out Jake's first day of school outfit, helping with homework, being a mother to us. The gaslighting was masterful, making him question reality. But then Jake would have nightmares, screaming about not wanting the special juice. He'd wake up panicked, checking his drinks for cloudiness. These moments reminded Dad why she couldn't come back. Her belongings became a battleground. She demanded immediate access to retrieve her things. Dad's lawyer suggested a supervised visit, but she refused, wanting unrestricted access to her home. The standoff continued for days. Finally, Dad hired a moving company. Under lawyer supervision, they packed her belongings, everything from her closet to her charity awards. Each item was documented, photographed, and carefully boxed. She accused us of stealing jewelry, but the video inventory proved otherwise. The financial untangling was complex. Joint accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios. Dad's lawyer worked to separate everything while she fought for maximum access. She'd grown accustomed to unlimited spending, and losing that clearly panicked her. Jake's teacher called with concerns. His behavior had changed dramatically, from the quiet, drowsy child to an energetic, talkative student. They needed to adjust his educational plan. It was actually a positive call, but it highlighted how long he'd been suffering. I started my own therapy. The therapist helped me process the guilt of not acting sooner, the anger at Dad for not seeing it, the fear that she might return. Oh wow, this is getting so intense. I can't believe she's standing at the gate screaming while the neighbors watch. That must be so embarrassing for the family. We worked through the trauma of watching Jake nearly die at that gala. Her smear campaign intensified. She contacted Dad's business associates, claiming mental health issues in our family. She suggested I was disturbed, that Jake had behavioral problems requiring medication. Some people believed her polished act, but Dr. Morrison became our unexpected ally. He wrote detailed medical reports about Jake's condition that night, the substance levels, the near-fatal OD. His professional reputation carried weight that her social connections couldn't override. Dad hired a publicist to manage the narrative. They crafted careful statements about family privacy, children's welfare, and ongoing legal matters. It was corporate speak, but it helped control the rumors spreading through our community. Jake's blood tests continued monthly. significantly. Each one showed improvement, his liver function returning to normal. The pediatrician created a timeline showing how his health had deteriorated during her presence and improved after her removal. I need to continue this story seamlessly from where it left off, focusing on escalating family conflict through action and events while avoiding dialogue. The middle section must show the stepmother's manipulation tactics intensifying as she tries to regain control. The timeline evidence became our strongest defense against her accusations. Dad's lawyer compiled everything into a comprehensive report showing Jake's hospital admissions coinciding with her social events. The pattern was undeniable. She escalated her tactics. One morning, we found a box on our doorstep containing Jake's favorite toys from when he was younger. No note, but the message was clear. She was reminding us of happier times. Jake saw the toys and started crying, confused about why his things were outside. Dad installed additional security cameras around the property. The security company recommended upgrading our alarm system after they found evidence someone had been testing the fence perimeter at night. Fresh footprints in the garden beds beneath Jake's window made my stomach turn. Her social media presence transformed overnight. She posted old family photos with captions about missing her boys and praying for reconciliation. Friends and acquaintances started reaching out to Dad, asking if we were okay, if the family was getting counseling. The pressure mounted daily. Jake's school called about a woman claiming to be his mother trying to pick him up early. The secretary, thankfully alert, had refused without proper authorization. Security footage showed her arguing in the main office before storming out. We had to implement a new pickup protocol with photo identification requirements. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. Dad signed them immediately, but she refused service 3 times. Her lawyer kept demanding meetings to discuss terms, but Dad's attorney advised against any direct contact. The legal chess game dragged on while she maneuvered for advantage. I started noticing cars following us. Nothing obvious, just the same vehicles appearing too often to be coincidence. Dad hired a private security firm to investigate. They confirmed surveillance but couldn't prove who was behind it. We varied our routes, changed schedules, adapted to this new reality. Jake's therapist recommended keeping his routine as normal as possible. Soccer practice, piano lessons, play dates with friends, but every activity required vigilance. I became his shadow, always watching for her or anyone she might send. One afternoon, Jake's best friend's mother pulled me aside at pickup. She'd received a call from someone claiming to be a social worker, asking questions about our family situation. The caller had detailed knowledge about Jake's hospitalization, but something felt off. She'd refused to answer and called Dad instead. Dad discovered irregularities in his company accounts, small transfers to unfamiliar vendors, contracts with inflated prices. His CFO traced them back to her access during their marriage. She'd been siphoning money for months, creating a private fund we knew nothing about. The house felt different without her presence, but reminders lurked everywhere. Jake found one of her scarves in the laundry room and brought it to me, asking when she was coming back. I told him she was sick and needed to get better first. He nodded solemnly and threw the scarf in the trash. Her lawyer sent a formal request for visitation rights with Jake. The document cited her role as his primary caregiver for years, her investment in his education and development. Dad's lawyer responded with the medical records and Dr. Morrison's testimony. The request was withdrawn within days. I caught someone photographing our house from across the street. By the time I got outside, they'd driven away. The security company increased patrols, but the feeling of being watched never left. Jake started asking why there were so many new people around. Dad's business partners began distancing themselves. Lunch meetings canceled, golf invitations withdrawn. The scandal was affecting his professional reputation despite his efforts to contain it. He worked later hours, trying to prove the company remained stable. Jake's teacher reported excellent progress. His reading improved dramatically once he could focus without sedation. His math scores jumped 2 grade levels. The school psychologist noted his increased confidence and social engagement. Evidence of what she'd stolen from him accumulated daily. She attempted contact through mutual friends. They'd call with messages about how sorry she was, how she wanted to explain her side. Some believed her performance, others saw through it. Our social circle divided into camps, forcing us to choose carefully who to trust. The security team caught someone attempting to access our mail. The postal worker reported a woman claiming to be Mrs. Johnson, needing to collect important documents. Her description matched perfectly. We had to rent a private mailbox and redirect everything. Jake started asking difficult questions. Why did his drinks always taste funny before? Why did he sleep so much? I gave age-appropriate answers while documenting his memories for potential future testimony. His recollections were heartbreaking in their innocence. Dad found hidden recording devices during a routine security sweep, tiny cameras in the air vents, audio recorders behind picture frames. The security team traced them to a batch purchased 6 months earlier, paid for with a credit card in her name. We wondered how long she'd been watching us. Her financial demands escalated through her lawyer. She wanted half of everything plus spousal support, claiming she'd given up her career to raise us. Dad's lawyer countered with evidence of the money she'd already stolen. The negotiations turned vicious. Jake's nightmares intensified as memories surfaced. He'd wake up describing dreams where he couldn't move, couldn't speak, while everyone around him continued normally. The therapist explained this was his mind processing the trauma of being drugged. I discovered she'd been contacting my school counselor, expressing concern about my violent tendencies and pathological lying. Fortunately, the counselor saw through the manipulation and alerted Dad. We had to involve school administration to prevent further interference. The private investigator Dad hired uncovered her background, previous relationships with older younger, wealthy men, always ending badly. A pattern of accusations and legal battles. One ex-husband had a son who'd suffered mysterious illnesses during their marriage. The similarities were chilling. Jake's medical team wanted to run comprehensive tests to assess long-term damage. The results showed liver stress and potential kidney issues from prolonged sedative exposure. He'd need monitoring for years to come. Each report added to our evidence file. She started showing up at Jake's activities, not approaching, just watching from a distance. The soccer coach had to ask her to leave when other parents complained. She'd sit in her car across from the piano teacher's house during his lessons, always just beyond restraining order distance. Dad's company board called an emergency meeting. Someone had leaked internal documents to competitors using her old access codes. IT security found the breach, but couldn't prove she was responsible. The board discussed his fitness to continue as CEO. Jake made a friend at therapy group, another child dealing with family trauma. Their play dates became his happiest moments. But then the friend's mother called, upset about strange questions her daughter was asked by a woman at the park. The description was unmistakable. Her tactics shifted to financial warfare. She maxed out joint credit cards we'd missed, took loans against shared assets, created debts we'd have to split. Dad's lawyer worked overtime trying to freeze accounts and limit damage. The financial bleeding seemed endless. I found Jake in his room one day, flushing juice down his bathroom sink. He'd been secretly disposing of any drinks he didn't make himself. The therapy helped, but trust would take years to rebuild. His fear of being drugged again broke my heart. She hired a new lawyer, more aggressive than the last. They filed motions claiming parental alienation, demanding psychological evaluations for all of us. The court dates piled up while Jake struggled to understand why we kept visiting lawyers' offices. Dad's health deteriorated from stress. His doctor prescribed blood pressure medication and recommended reducing work hours, but stepping back from the company now would look like admission of guilt. He pushed forward, exhausted but determined. Jake's progress reports from school showed remarkable improvement. Teachers marveled at his transformation from the quiet, drowsy child to an engaged, enthusiastic student. We collected every positive assessment, building our case that removing her saved his future. The security company recommended varying Jake's schedule unpredictably. Different routes to school, random activity changes, anything to disrupt surveillance patterns. Jake adapted remarkably, treating it like a game, but I saw the confusion in his eyes. She attempted to access Jake's medical records through her doctor friend. The hospital caught the unauthorized request and alerted us. Dad's lawyer sent cease and desist letters, but we knew she'd keep trying. Every system had vulnerabilities. Jake started expressing himself through art. His drawings showed a house divided in half, one side bright and colorful, the other dark and frightening. The therapist used these sessions to help him process emotions he couldn't verbalize. Each picture told our story. Dad discovered she'd been building a case for months before the gala incident. Photos taken out of context, recordings of Jake's hyperactive moments, documentation painting us as problem children needing medication. Her planning had been meticulous. The financial forensics revealed more theft. Investment accounts drained, valuable items sold and replaced with replicas, even Jake's college fund touched. The total approached 6 figures. Dad's lawyer added fraud to the divorce proceedings. Jake asked to sleep in my room permanently. He decorated his space with drawings and toys, but couldn't feel safe alone. I moved his bed next to mine, creating a fortress of stuffed animals between us, whatever it took to help him heal. Her smear campaign reached Dad's clients. Anonymous emails suggesting instability, questioning his judgment. Some believed it, others recognized manipulation. But doubt, once planted, grew regardless of truth. Contracts were quietly not renewed. I taught Jake to be observant without being paranoid. We made games of noticing details, remembering faces, staying aware of surroundings. This poor little kid is so scared that he won't even trust juice anymore. And seeing him make a game out of changing his routes to school while being confused inside is just so sad. I can't believe she tried to get his medical records through a doctor friend and was taking pictures of him for months before everything came out. He thought we were playing spy, not realizing I was teaching him survival skills no child should need. The house underwent security upgrades, reinforced locks, shatterproof windows, panic buttons in every room. Jake helped test the systems, proud to be included. We turned fear into empowerment, giving him control over his safety. She filed complaints with child services, alleging neglect and abuse. The investigations disrupted our lives, but found no evidence supporting her claims. Each false report added to our documentation of harassment. The social workers began recognizing her pattern. Jake's birthday approached, his first without her. He asked if she would send a present. Dad and I exchanged glances, unsure how to explain that sometimes people who hurt us don't get to celebrate with us anymore. We planned a small party with trusted friends. The security footage revealed her latest tactic. She'd hired people to photograph us in public, building a collection of images for unknown purposes. Every outing became a potential surveillance opportunity. Privacy became a luxury we couldn't afford. Dad's lawyer recommended documenting everything, no matter how small. We created detailed logs of incidents, backed up in multiple locations. The evidence files grew daily. Jake contributed by drawing pictures of things that scared him. Her financial demands became desperate. She'd burned through whatever money she'd stolen and needed more. The divorce settlement offers turned ridiculous. Dad's lawyer advised patience, letting her desperation work against her. Jake's resilience amazed everyone. He adapted to each new challenge, finding joy despite the chaos. His laughter returned gradually, genuine and unforced. Watching him reclaim his childhood became our motivation to keep fighting. She tried reaching Jake through technology, Friend requests from fake accounts, messages through game platforms, even attempts to contact him through school tablets. We had to monitor every digital interaction, teaching him about online safety years too early. The extended family began choosing sides. Some believed her performance, others saw the truth. Holiday planning became a minefield of divided loyalties. Jake noticed the tension, but focused on the relatives who showed genuine love. Dad's company stabilized after the initial scandal. His transparency with the board, combined with strong performance, earned their continued support. But the stress showed in gray hair and deepening lines. He aged years in months. Jake's medical team remained vigilant. Each checkup brought relief as his body recovered, but the psychological healing would take longer. He'd lost crucial developmental time to her substances. We celebrated small victories while acknowledging the long road ahead. Her attempts at contact escalated before court dates. Flowers delivered with no card, gifts left at the gate, messages through every possible channel. Each gesture felt like a threat wrapped in false sentiment. We documented everything for the lawyers. I learned to balance protecting Jake with letting him be a kid. He needed normal experiences despite the abnormal circumstances. Every playground visit, every birthday party required careful planning, but his smile made the effort worthwhile. The divorce proceedings dragged on. Her lawyer filed motion after motion, delaying resolution. Dad's legal bills mounted while she used every tactic to prolong the process. Jake asked when the lawyer visits would end. We had no answer. She appeared at the school fundraiser, dressed perfectly, playing the concerned parent. Other families whispered and stared. Jake saw her across the gymnasium and froze. I guided him outside while Dad handled the situation. The damage was done. Jake's trust issues extended beyond drinks. He questioned food he didn't see prepared, became anxious about medications for simple illnesses. The therapist worked on rebuilding his ability to feel safe. Progress came slowly but steadily. Her narrative shifted to mental health claims. She suggested postpartum depression, temporary psychological breaks, anything to excuse her actions. Some people bought the performance. Others remembered Jake turning blue at the gala. Dad implemented new household rules. No drinks left unattended, all medications locked up, every visitor verified. Jake helped create the safety protocols, gaining control over his environment. The house became our fortress against her chaos. The investigation into her doctor friend progressed slowly. Medical boards moved cautiously, requiring extensive evidence. Dr. Morrison's testimony proved crucial, but the process frustrated us. Jake's suffering deserved faster justice. She hired private investigators to find dirt on us. They interviewed neighbors, contacted distant relatives, searched for any ammunition. When they found nothing substantial, she created stories instead. The truth became irrelevant to her narrative. Jake's academic achievements multiplied. Science fair ribbons, reading awards, math competition medals. Each success proved what he could accomplish without sedation. We displayed them prominently, evidence of his true potential finally unleashed. The custody evaluation began despite her lack of biological connection. Her lawyer argued for established relationship rights. The evaluator interviewed Jake carefully, noting his anxiety around discussions of her. The report would take months to complete. Dad's business recovered through determination and transparency. He shared our story selectively with key partners, earning support through honesty. Some relationships never recovered, but new alliances formed with those who valued integrity. Jake developed coping mechanisms that broke my heart. He'd smell drinks before sipping, inspect food for hidden pills, always sit where he could see exits. The therapist assured us these would fade with time and continued safety. Her final financial assault came through identity theft. Credit cards opened in Dad's name, loans attempted using his information. The fraud department became our frequent contact. Each incident added to criminal complaints beyond the divorce. Jake asked to visit her in supervised setting, hoping for answers. The therapist supported his need for closure, but she refused unless conditions included unsupervised access. Jake's rejection hurt, but he wasn't ready to see her anyway. The house finally felt like home again. Jake's laughter echoed through rooms once filled with tension. We established new traditions, created fresh memories, but vigilance remained our constant companion. Her social media evolved into a victim narrative. She painted herself as a stepmother rejected by ungrateful children, a wife abandoned after years of sacrifice. Those who knew the truth found it sickening. Others offered sympathy she didn't deserve. Jake's strength inspired me daily. He faced each challenge with courage beyond his years. When classmates asked about his family situation, he simply said his stepmother was sick and couldn't take care of us anymore. His grace amazed me. The legal bills threatened Dad's financial stability. Between lawyers, security, and medical costs, the divorce drained resources faster than anticipated. But Jake's safety justified every expense. We'd rebuild finances later. She made one last attempt at reconciliation through Dad's mother. The manipulation was masterful, playing on grandmother's desire for family unity. But even she couldn't ignore Jake's medical records. The attempt failed, burning another bridge. Jake's recovery milestone arrived quietly. 6 months without sedatives, his body finally testing completely clean. We celebrated with his favorite dinner and a movie night. He chose a superhero film about overcoming villains. The symbolism wasn't lost on us. Dad received the final divorce decree on a Thursday afternoon. The financial settlement hurt, but freed us from her legal grasp. Jake was at school when the news came. That night, we told him the lawyer visits were finally over, but her harassment continued post-divorce. Fake social media accounts spreading lies, anonymous calls to Dad's clients, subtle threats through third parties. The restraining order helped, but couldn't stop everything. We adapted to permanent vigilance. Jake entered middle school with confidence we'd never seen before. His teachers praised his enthusiasm and leadership. He joined clubs, made friends, lived the childhood she'd tried to steal. Each achievement felt like victory over her legacy. The investigation into her past revealed more victims, other stepchildren with mysterious illnesses, similar patterns of control through medication. Dad's lawyer shared our evidence with their families. The network of her damage expanded beyond us. Jake's therapist recommended family counseling to process our collective trauma. Together, we unpacked the years of manipulation and abuse. Jake learned his experiences weren't his fault. We all learned to stop blaming ourselves for not seeing it sooner. Her attempts at contact became more desperate. Letters sent through lawyers, messages through former mutual friends, even attempts to approach us in public places. Each violation of the restraining order added to our legal documentation. Dad started dating cautiously after a year. Jake's reaction was predictable. Intense scrutiny of any woman who entered our lives. We respected his need for safety while encouraging him to remain open to new relationships. Trust would rebuild slowly. The charity organization contacted Dad about returning donations from events where Jake was drugged. They'd investigated and found patterns of children appearing unusually subdued at her gatherings. The scandal reached beyond our family. Jake's artwork evolved from dark divisions to brighter themes. His therapist displayed the progression, showing his emotional journey through colors and subjects. The recent pictures showed a happy family of 3, no shadowy figures lurking. She lost her social standing as truth spread through the community. Former friends distanced themselves. Charity boards removed her name. The country club revoked membership. The perfect image she'd protected so fiercely crumbled completely. Jake asked about forgiveness during a therapy session. Could someone do terrible things and still deserve forgiveness? The therapist helped him understand forgiveness was for his peace, not her absolution. He wasn't ready yet, and that was okay. Dad's company thrived once the scandal faded. His handling of the crisis earned respect from those who mattered. Jake and I attended the company picnic that summer, no longer worried about embarrassing anyone. We belonged there as ourselves. The medical monitoring continued, but showed only improvement. Jake's body proved resilient, healing from years of chemical abuse. Each clean test result felt like reclaiming another piece of his stolen childhood. The doctors expressed cautious optimism about long-term effects. Her final message came through a mutual acquaintance. She wanted us to know she was getting help, attending therapy, working on herself. The words rang hollow after years of manipulation. Jake asked me to delete it without reading it to him. We found our new normal in small moments. Jake bouncing off walls without shame, talking rapidly about his interests without sedation. Dad laughing at dinner instead of checking his phone for her latest attack. Me watching my little brother thrive without fear. The second anniversary of the gala approached with mixed emotions. Jake wanted to mark it somehow, to acknowledge surviving her worst. We decided on a family trip, creating new memories to overshadow the traumatic ones. He chose the destination, a beach where he could run freely. Standing in the ocean, watching Jake chase waves with unbridled energy, I realized we'd won.
WTH.
I can't believe she had other victims too, but I'm so glad those families are getting justice now, not through legal battles or financial settlements, but by reclaiming his childhood. His laughter carried over the water, pure and unmedicated, the sound of freedom. Dad joined us in the waves, splashing and playing like he hadn't in years. The weight of maintaining perfect appearances had lifted. We were just a family enjoying a moment, no longer performing for anyone's approval. That night, Jake fell asleep naturally, exhausted from play rather than pills. His breathing was deep and healthy, no more shallow gasps that had terrified me. I watched him sleep peacefully, finally believing our nightmare had truly ended. The hotel room felt safe in a way our home hadn't for so long. No security cameras needed, no checking locks twice, no fear of unexpected visitors. Just 3 people who'd survived something terrible together and emerged stronger. Jake woke early, eager to explore the beach again. His energy was infectious, pulling us into adventure after adventure. We built sand castles, collected shells, raced along the shore. Each activity celebrated his freedom from chemical restraints. As we packed to leave, Jake hugged me tightly. He thanked me for protecting him, for believing him, for fighting when he couldn't. I held him close, feeling the strength in his small frame. He'd survived so much and emerged unbroken. The drive home was filled with Jake's chatter about the trip, plans for the future, excitement about returning to school. Dad and I exchanged smiles in the mirror, both thinking the same thing. This was who Jake really was, finally free to be himself. Our house welcomed us back, feeling more like home than ever. Jake ran to his room to add shells to his collection, his footsteps loud and joyful. The silence she'd enforced through substances was gone forever. Our home was alive again. That evening, as Jake practiced piano with enthusiasm instead of drugged compliance, I thought about justice. Legal systems had failed to fully punish her crimes, but we'd found our own justice in Jake's recovery, in our family's survival, in the truth finally being known. Dad showed me college brochures that night. In the chaos, I'd forgotten about my own future, but seeing Jake thriving gave me permission to think beyond daily survival. We could all move forward now, building lives free from her shadow. The story felt complete, but ongoing. Jake would need support for years. Dad would always carry the guilt of not seeing sooner, and I'd remain hyper-vigilant about his safety. But we'd found our way through the darkness together. The beach trip marked a turning point, but our return home brought fresh challenges. 3 days after we got back, Jake's school called about an incident during recess. A woman matching her description had approached the fence, trying to get Jake's attention. Security footage showed her holding what looked like his old old favorite candy, the kind she used to hide pills in. Jake had frozen when he saw her, then run to his teacher shaking. The school implemented immediate lockdown procedures while calling Dad and the police. By the time officers arrived, she'd vanished, leaving only the candy scattered on the sidewalk outside the fence. That evening, Dad made calls to increase security at Jake's school. Private guards would monitor the perimeter during school hours. Jake listened from the stairs, his small hands gripping the railing. I found him there and guided him back to his room, where we built a blanket fort together. The restraining order violations piled up, but enforcement remained frustratingly limited. She'd appear just long enough to unsettle us, then disappear before authorities could respond. Her lawyer claimed these were coincidental encounters, impossible to prove otherwise. Dad's work suffered as he tried to manage the escalating situation. Board meetings missed, contracts delayed, his focus split between protecting us and maintaining his position. His assistant fielded constant calls, screening for her voice under assumed names. Jake's therapy sessions intensified. He'd progressed so well, but her reappearance triggered setbacks. The drawings turned dark again, showing figures lurking outside windows. His therapist recommended increasing session frequency and considering medication for anxiety, though Jake panicked at any mention of pills. I started sleeping in Jake's room again. He'd wake from nightmares about her getting into the house, about drinks that made him sleepy. We'd sit together until dawn, playing quiet games or reading stories. Neither of us could fully relax anymore. The security company suggested moving temporarily. Dad researched rental properties in nearby towns, somewhere she wouldn't know to look. But Jake didn't want to leave his school, his friends, the stability we'd fought to create. We were trapped between safety and normalcy. Her financial harassment continued through identity theft attempts. New credit applications appeared weekly, using Dad's information. The fraud department knew us by name, automatically flagging suspicious activity. Each incident required hours of documentation and dispute filing. One morning, we woke to find our mailbox destroyed, mail scattered across the lawn. Among the debris was a manila envelope with no postage, containing photos of Jake at school, at soccer practice, at his friend's birthday party. Each image had been taken from a distance, but the message was clear. Dad called an emergency family meeting. We sat in the living room, curtains drawn, discussing options. Jake surprised us with his maturity, saying he understood if we needed to move. His courage in facing another upheaval broke my heart. The private investigator brought disturbing news. She'd been staying with various acquaintances, moving frequently to avoid detection. She'd also been in contact with her doctor friend, despite his license being under review. The possibility of her accessing substances again terrified us. Jake's school implemented new protocols. Teachers walked him directly to our car, no exceptions. His friend's parents were briefed on the situation, agreeing to supervised playdates only. Jake handled the restrictions better than expected, but I saw how it isolated him. Dad's lawyer filed additional motions citing the harassment, seeking enforcement of the restraining order. The judge expressed concern, but said without proof of immediate physical threat, options remained limited. The legal system's inability to protect Jake infuriated us. Her tactics shifted to psychological warfare through proxies. Former mutual friends called with messages, claiming she was Sewers Lytle, desperate, needed closure. Some seemed genuinely concerned, others were clearly manipulated. We stopped answering calls from anyone we didn't absolutely trust. Jake's recovery continued despite the stress. His grades remained strong, his energy boundless when he felt safe. But he developed habits that revealed his anxiety, checking locks obsessively, inspecting his backpack for tampering, always sitting where he could see all entrances. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Jake's teacher called, hysterical. During art class, Jake had suddenly become violently ill. The school nurse found his water bottle smelled strange. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital while I raced to meet them. Tests revealed traces of sedatives, not enough to cause serious harm, but enough to terrify us. Security footage from the school showed nothing unusual, but Jake insisted his water bottle had tasted different after snack time. Someone had accessed it during the 10 minutes students left bags unattended. Dad arrived at the hospital white-faced and shaking. He held Jake while doctors ran more tests, ensuring no lasting damage. The police took the water bottle for testing, interviewed school staff, but found no clear evidence of how it happened. That night changed everything. Dad made phone calls I'd never heard before, his CEO voice cold and determined. By morning, he'd arranged a meeting with his board, explaining he needed immediate family leave. His second-in-command would assume daily operations. We packed essential belongings while Jake slept. Dad had secured a rental house 2 hours away, in a town where we knew nobody. The security company would maintain our empty house, making it appear occupied. We'd disappear completely until we could ensure Jake's safety. Jake woke confused as we loaded the car in darkness. I explained we were going on another adventure, somewhere new where he'd be safe. He nodded solemnly, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. He'd learned to trust our protection even when he didn't understand. The rental house was smaller but secure. Gated community, excellent school system, no connections to our previous life. Dad enrolled Jake under documentation that made tracking difficult. I registered for online schooling to stay with Jake during his transition. Establishing new routines took weeks. Jake struggled with nightmares, missing his friends, adjusting to yet another change. But gradually, the color returned to his drawings. He made friends with neighbor kids, joined a new soccer team, began to relax. Dad worked remotely, flying back for essential meetings only. His company supported the arrangement, understanding the circumstances. He'd aged visibly through the ordeal, but watching Jake play safely in our new backyard brought peace to his features. The investigation into the water bottle incident continued. Fingerprint analysis proved inconclusive. Security footage showed numerous people near Jake's classroom. Without concrete evidence, prosecutors couldn't file charges. The case stalled, another frustration in our quest for justice. 3 months into our new life, the private investigator called with news. She'd been arrested for prescription fraud, caught using fake identities to obtain sedatives. The arrest might violate her probation from previous charges we'd filed. Finally, consequences seemed possible. Jake thrived in his new environment. Without constant fear, his true personality emerged fully. He joined drama club, excelled in science competitions, made deep friendships. Watching him perform in the school play, animated and confident, I saw who he could have always been. Dad's lawyer handled the ongoing legal matters. The restraining order was updated with our new location sealed from public records. Financial protections strengthened. Criminal charges for the water bottle incident remained open, pending evidence. 6 months after our move, we learned she'd been sentenced to rehabilitation and probation monitoring. The prescription fraud charges, combined with restraining order violations, finally brought consequences. She'd served time in a facility specializing in psychological disorders. Jake received the news quietly. He asked if she was getting help, showing compassion that amazed me. The therapist said this was healthy, that forgiveness for his own peace might come eventually. But for now, distance and safety were enough. Our new life settled into peaceful rhythms. Jake walked to school with friends, no security needed. Dad found balance between work and family. I applied to colleges, finally able to plan my own future. The hypervigilance faded slowly but steadily. A year after the move, Jake asked to write her a letter. Not to send, just to express his feelings. He wrote about his confusion, his fear, his anger at lost years. Then he wrote about moving forward, about choosing happiness. He burned the letter in our fireplace, watching smoke carry away the words. Dad received updates through lawyers. She was responding to treatment, accepting responsibility for her actions. Her therapists reported breakthrough moments, understanding her compulsion to control through sedation. The information brought no satisfaction, only relief that she was contained. Jake's medical monitoring showed complete recovery. His body had healed from years of chemical abuse. The psychological healing continued, but his resilience amazed everyone. He spoke at his therapy group about survival, helping other children process trauma. 2 years after that terrifying gala, our family had transformed, not into what we'd been before, but something new and stronger. Jake's laughter filled our home, genuine and frequent. Dad had learned to prioritize presence over perfection. I'd found my own strength through protecting my brother. The story spread through our old community, becoming a cautionary tale about hidden abuse. Other families came forward with similar suspicions about their children's mysterious illnesses during social events. The charity organization implemented new child protection protocols. Jake graduated middle school with honors, his speech about overcoming challenges bringing tears to audience members' eyes. He thanked his support system without detailing specifics. His strength in moving forward inspired everyone who knew his story. As I prepared for college, Jake helped me pack. He'd grown taller, stronger, more confident. The scared little boy who could barely stay awake had become a young man full of life and possibility. He hugged me tightly, whispering thanks for saving his life. Dad drove me to campus, Jake chattering excitedly in the back seat about visiting weekends. Our family had survived the unthinkable through love, determination, and sacrifice. The physical distance of college couldn't break bonds forged through such trials. That first night in my dorm, I video called home. Jake showed me his latest science project, talking rapidly about variables and hypotheses. His unmedicated enthusiasm remained my favorite sound. Dad smiled in the background, finally at peace. The healing continued daily through small victories. Jake trying new foods without fear. Dad dating again, slowly and carefully. Me learning to trust that Jake was safe, even when I wasn't there. Each step forward honored how far we'd come. Looking back at that horrible gala night, I couldn't have imagined this outcome. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and honest and ours. Jake's recovery became our family's resurrection, proof that love could overcome even the darkest manipulation. We'd built something unbreakable from the ruins of what she'd tried to destroy. Jake's bright future stretched ahead, unlimited by artificial sedation. Our family had learned to protect each other fiercely while still embracing joy. That was our true victory.